And once again, we are back here on Living in the 21st Century. Joining me today is Kathy Hassinger. She's the director for Dance Currents, Inc. Kathy, it's really a pleasure to have you on this morning.
Thank you so much, Earl. I'm delighted to be here. My name, obviously, as Earl introduced me, was Kathy Hassinger, and I'm director of Dance Currents, Inc., as well as a director of the film To Feel the Earth and Touch the Sky, Living the Legacy of American Modern Dance. Just like to tell you a little bit about the film. The film is really a history of modern dance, and it traces the prime movers, the beginning people who started modern dance, and the evolution of the form. So these people were iconoclasts, or they broke the mold in starting this form. They were somewhat revolutionary, and they were iconoclasts in their time, which was the 20th century, and they are icons in ours, which means they point the way to a fuller and more beautiful form of modern dance in the 21st century. So I'd like to just show you a trailer, a 30-second trailer on what the film is about.
Sure, beautiful.
So that was really just an indication of to feeling the earth and touching the sky. And that figure of the tree that you saw in the middle of the trailer indicated the evolution of modern dance. One thing that's really interesting about it is that during the 40s and 50s, the State Department sent Martha Graham, who was one of the people in the middle of the tree, to overseas a number of times because she and her company indicated or illustrated, personified individualism and freedom. And the State Department wanted the rest of the world to see that we had that kind of dance that was free and individually oriented. So they continued to send her and her company. Another thing about modern dance is that it grew, we're talking about the evolution, on aesthetic values as opposed to just mechanical or physical values. So in other words, if you're going to teach a child particularly how to dance, you might say, sway like the wind in the trees, or move as if you were a wave on the beach, or move from your heart, as opposed to point your feet and bend your knees and do this with your arms. So these aesthetic values were really, really important for the development of modern dance. And one that I was illustrating was that dance became more in tune with nature. And that was Isadora Duncan, the mother of modern dance. That was her real kind of gift to the art. There were a lot of other things that happened in the evolution of modern dance. During the 40s and 50s, as we've talked about before, dancers didn't want to be a tree, or they didn't want to be an exotic, creature from another world. They wanted to relate to their world. And at that time, their world was full of war, segregation, alienation, and all kinds of things that were not necessarily pleasant. So they were not afraid to make pieces that showed they were activists in their art. And they brought in a whole new working class into this, what had seemed to be an elite art form, because they were talking about them. They were talking about the people at the time and the difficulties that they were going through. So social action became a big part of modern dance. That was another feature. And finally, towards the end of the 20th century, there was a lot of experimentation. A lot of the old forms were thrown out and new forms developed, and experimentation, like with Twyla Tharp, who I'm sure you've heard about, putting different styles together, calling it crossover ballets. So there are lots of features and forms that modern dance underwent. So the next trailer, which is 2 minutes, is about the evolution of modern dance. Exactly.
Isadora Duncan, the mother of modern dance, broke ground for a new democracy of the dance in the early 1900s. She used natural movements to create works of wonder, joy, sorrow, grief, rebellion, and redemption. Her audiences were huge, and her momentum continues to this day. The modern dance movement gathered steam in the 1930s and 40s with strong individuals like Martha Graham and Doris Humphrey, severing ties with the past to create fresh and rigorous new dance techniques. These women built a new kind of dancer, strong, fast, flexible, and adaptable, and struggled to make dance relate to the contemporary world and its issues.
I remember mostly that they never put their own stamp on your work. They guided you to find your own stamp. So they weren't choreographing for you. They were helping you to find out where you were in that period of your work, because of course it changes over the years.
In the 1950s, during the McCarthy era, a few dancers who studied with Graham, like Anna Sokolow, Sophie Maslow, and Jane Dudley, did exactly that by creating the new dance group. They performed for new audiences like workers and trade unions, and reconnected modern dance with its democratic origins. All the choreographers in this film trained long and hard to achieve artistic freedom. They then trained and transformed their students to build on the past, look to the future, and touch the sky.
So just to let people know, if you have any questions at all, you can go to www.dancecurrentsinc.com and sign up on the contact sheet, and I will be able to answer any questions or actually tell you about our PBS airings, because we're preparing the film for a PBS broadcast, which we're excited about. So that, again, that's www.dancecurrentsinc.com. The next person I'd like to talk about, Katherine Dunham, was one of the pivotal modern dancers. And she was brought up in Chicago and went to the University of Chicago and majored in anthropology and became an anthropologist. She got a grant to go to the Caribbean and study their life, their rituals, their dances, their traditions. And she spent a number of years writing and doing anthropology, and then came back and put her research on stage. Now, this was really phenomenal because it had been a hidden culture. And this culture was just mind-blowing. People had never seen such luscious costumes and sets and rhythms, and it was just a fabulous show that she developed, and she performed in 67 countries of the world. So she developed form within a form, and you could call her actually the mother of black dance, because she started this African diasporic movement. So, we're going to show now a bit about Katherine Dunham's life. And this is Caribbean History Month, so it's great to bring her forward. Yeah.
Katherine Dunham changed modern dance. It's impossible to do her justice in such a short film, but important to include her, as she was a pioneer of modern dance. She performed in 67 countries of the world. She developed the Dunham technique, a rigorous and comprehensive technique influencing modern and jazz dance. She built 5 schools, including the famous Dunham School of Dance and Theater in New York City, where such artists as Marlon Brando and James Dean took classes. Most importantly, she had an impact on whomever met her. She was an activist through her art.
I know you've heard about it, the occasion when I was in Lexington, Kentucky, and the audience was totally segregated. I didn't think about it because I was so busy with the company, and that has saved me so many, many times. I was just too busy to get into what I considered the small things. This turned out to be a big thing. It turned out that no black people could sit in the orchestra seats. And I, after going through a whole lot of resistance, threats, you name it. I did everything possible to be able to get on that stage and feel good about it. And I couldn't win then. Therefore, I decided if I couldn't win at the beginning, I'd win at the end. I did the show. They loved it. Maybe the show was better than it had ever been because everybody was uptight. And in the end, I told them we would never come back until we could appear before people who were sitting next to each other. People of my color were sitting next to people of your color.
She elevated the beauty and magic of Caribbean, African, and American dance. All of these accomplishments and more were a testament to her genius. The set, costumes, and lighting were all designed by her husband, John Pratt, a brilliant artist in his own right. They worked in symbiosis. They created the show together. A study of her life through her books, interviews, dance technique, awards, and recognitions would be a life-changing pursuit.
Shango is one of the gods from Africa that has been maintained through the Caribbean, through the entire African diaspora. Shango is very strong, god that one associated with an iron will and a determination that they could bring things about, bring them to happen for good or for bad if needed. And I'd say Shango was probably the strongest of the African gods. And he was worshipped all through the Caribbean and South America. Every place that I went, a Shango ceremony was bound to be an important one. You know, you might have one to Agwe or Ogun or whatever, and they were vivid, colorful, and so forth. But Shango, you knew there would be something that would be extraordinary, that would be very strong and very powerful.
That's beautiful, Kathy. I want to ask this question before we go into the part of having your movie marketed and so forth on the television platform. Now, dance is an artful form of communication, and sometimes it can stay within the restraints of one segment of society. How do your movie basically market this on a global platform where it can be a showcase to humanity?
Well, we have been doing our best to distribute the film. Documentaries are having a hard time all around. Not two documentaries are shown so much anymore, but we are working for a PBS broadcast. We've been accepted by the national television National Education Television Association, NETA, to have a PBS broadcast. So that is going to require that we re-edit the film and do a lot of publicity and kind of get the film out there. So again, I'd just like to mention to all of you who are watching the film that if you go to www.dancecurrentsinc.com, you can sign up on the contact sheet, and I will send you information about the PBS airings, which will be coming up. By doing so, you'll also be really supporting modern dance and supporting this inclusive art form that really is built on freedom, independence, individuality. It's built on aesthetic values and social activism and experimentation, lots and lots of experimentation. Again, I'm so delighted, Errol, that you had me on the show to talk about the film. Are there any other questions?
Well, definitely. I would love you to actually explain your life as a choreographer and the amount of different groups you have worked with over the years. I was privileged to film some of your shoots. How do you feel as a person coming to this stage where you can inspire so much younger people from different generations to be self-confident in playing the role in these major pieces?
Mm-hmm. Well, one of the ways I have taught in the past, and I'm still teaching, I've been struggling with a torn tendon, but that hasn't kept me out for forever. Is to teach some of these older historical forms. And one of the reasons I do that is it gives people a grounding in the past so that they can go forward in the present with an understanding of what's been behind them. So I do attempt to teach with that repertory, and we call it 100 Years of Modern Dance. And there are a number of pieces from Isadora Duncan's piece, which you saw filmed, all the way to Robert Battle, who's now head of the Alvin Ailey Company. And we have one of his pieces called Battle Etude. So the 100 Years of Modern Dance repertory spans 100 years, the 20th century, essentially. I think teaching has been my life's career, and I love to teach. And in terms of what I was talking about, there's always an opportunity in modern dance to emphasize those values of imagination, as I was talking about before, of moving from the heart, of moving with a sense of nature, natural movement, with finding the reason that you're on stage and going deep and digging deep so that you can communicate with your audience. So I like to teach from that standpoint.
Beautiful. Do you think modern dance today, there are so many different types of dances, do you think modern dance lack any of the principles of what you're here explaining in terms of a bodily communication to its audience, feeling from your heart, feeling the tendencies of the move of the wind and the rush of the sea? Do you think that those expressions and feelings today are lack in modern dance, in some modern dances, so to speak? Because I believe that firmly, yes, dance is an art form that which communicates a different language and is communicated through our body language and moves and so forth. Do you think that this younger generation in modern dance, be it hip hop or be it some other form of artistry, do you think they're lacking some of those principles of dance?
I think what has happened is that people continue to explore and people continue to experiment, and new forms are kind of popping up all over. one thing that I find that's really important in dance is to have some kind of disciplined and consistent training. And I personally think that the forms of modern dance do provide that. They're a little bit difficult to find because that kind of training is not publicly available so much. But having the discipline of some kind of training, a consistent daily discipline, provides more of an understanding of what the body is trying to communicate. And then the passion comes, and then you can be spontaneous in your physical speech, in your dance. But as Martha Graham says, it takes 10 years of training to find that spontaneity.
That's a long time. One thing I would love to ask you here is that, do you think the rhythmic changes of dances to this modern time is somewhat different from that time? And do dance speak the same language today that it used to speak 10, 15, 20, 30 years ago? And I asked you this question because I see people dance to all kinds of music, and I don't get an understanding of what they're actually doing. On the other hand, when your dancers begin to dance, I get an understanding and feeling of what they are doing. So that's why I'm asking you, do you think the modern dancers today really have it, or they just do something or some move that they feel look good, but not really communicating any form of what they're doing?
Yeah. Well, I think that it's a really good question, mm-hmm. and a very difficult question to answer. Mm-hmm. I think one of the reasons that I made the film, that I developed the film, was because I felt that some of these wonderful techniques that you saw in the trailers were getting a little lost.
Yes.
And so there was a sense in which I wanted to go back, and I wanted to go to the teachers in Boston, the Boston area, who had experience with some of these prime movers of modern dance, and get them to talk a little bit about their training and their experience. Every age has its own way of expressing itself. And I think that I often feel the way that you do. And I think that there are times when a lot of these expressions go back and forth. For instance, at Jacob's Pillow, coming up this summer, practically the whole summer is devoted to Katherine Dunham. Okay. So she hasn't, she's not gone yet. I mean, there are a lot of people who really still, and these are people who do hip hop, mm-hmm. and these are people who are, in a vein of dance that you and I may not understand terribly, right. But it's all devoted to her. So, these important people don't necessarily die so quickly.
That's true. So therefore you can say that the expression and foundation of dance still exists in its own different ways, but it basically is formatted off what had been laid there before.
Yes. That actually the definition of original is origin. So yes. Going back to our origins is always insightful.
Beautiful. Well, Kathy, we're coming down to the last 2 minutes of the program. So if you want to conclude by making your final say, please do so.
Well, thank you very much, everyone. I'd just like to say I would love it if you were to go to www.dancecurrentsinc.com and support modern dance and support our PBS broadcast by signing up on the contact sheet and getting information about the airings.
Will do so.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, to all those who have been tuning in on Living in the 21st Century, I want to say to you, have a blessed day. Bye-bye.